This is a $10,000 hammer made with 24 karat gold and a diamond inlay, and I'm going to make it along with this $1,000 titanium hammer, this $100 steel hammer, and even this $1 hammer. I think that'll work.
No.
I made each of them from scratch, which ended up pushing me to my limits and even almost burning the entire shop down.
No. Oh no.
You might think it's not possible to make a hammer with $1, but if I get a branch from the tree in the backyard and a rock from the construction site, I can put them together and make a working hammer. I don't want to spend too much time on this because time is money, so I'll just carve out a channel in the rock and wrap these twigs around it. This sucks. I think that'll work. I bought this twine for $8, so if I only use an eighth of it, that'll be my $1. And there it is. It ended up taking about 45 minutes, which was pretty quick. I wish I could say the same about the $10,000 hammer, but it took me 2 weeks and my entire paycheck. So help me out by watching the entire video. We're going to be testing all these hammers in this video, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's move on to the $100 steel hammer. Also, thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. For the steel hammer, I went over to our collection of random pieces of metal and selected the only piece that was big enough to fit a hammerhead inside it. We're gonna cut that shape first, and then flip it and cut out that shape. Unfortunately, it's a piece of round bar, but that shouldn't be a problem for old Large Marge the Waterjet. We do this not because it's easy, but because it's stupid.
What?
Then I set it up on the jet and started cutting. Because I chose a round piece, all the water sprayed directly on the camera. So that was epic. All right, it's done. My phone and the light got absolutely flavor blasted. Let's see how this turned out. Okay, out you get. Come on now. Why don't I use my hammer to get it out? There we go. It only took 3 minutes to cut, but I did need to take a few minutes to go show everyone how silly it looked. You ready for this, Palmer?
Look at that smooth cut though.
Is your hammer?
Yeah, wide version. I put it back on the jet and very carefully lined it up so the stem would be where it's supposed to be. All right, here we go. Let's hope it doesn't spray my phone again. In case you're wondering, my phone did get flavor blasted. The magnetic charging ring is holding on to the metal fragments. Time to wash it off. All right, we're pushing an hour and a half. Let's see how it looks. Ooh, that is nice. The shape is just about perfect. Now we're ready to form it. To start, I put the hammerhead in the kiln. 30 minutes later, it was nice and hot, and I was ready to try my hand at a little bit of amateur blacksmithing. We've got our half anvil here. I don't see how this could go wrong. All right, so how do I do this? I need 3 hands. I need 1 hand to hold this in place, 1 hand to hold the chisel, and 1 hand to hammer. Oh, sorry gloves. That is not working as well as I hoped it would. It might have gotten too cold. All right, it's a lot hotter this time. Come on. My gloves are catching on fire. Yowza. I think we might need to get a little hotter. This is why all the pro blacksmiths are cutting their anvils in half. Can't do this with a normal anvil. Yeah. It's looking pretty good. We'll let it cool off and get to work on the next step. I went over to the fancy wood store and found myself a nice piece of fancy wood. While I was there, I also snagged a piece of maple for the titanium hammer. To save time, I mounted the walnut to the Waterjet and cut out a rough handle shape. All right, let's see how it turned out. Ooh, that is nice. That's a great blank. Now we can go round it out using woodworking tools, but this reduces my work by a lot. So thanks, Waterjet. I cut off about 1/3 of it on the table saw and got really scared I was gonna cut off my fingers. Fortunately, they stayed attached to my body. Then I shaved down the stem with a metal cutting bandsaw because we don't have a wooden one. Like my grandpa always said, you can cut wood with a metal cutting bandsaw, but you can't cut metal with a wood cutting bandsaw. Maybe that's why he's dead. Anyways, I sanded the heck out of the hammerhead because the forging had left quite a nasty surface finish on it. It was kind of hard to get all the surfaces because of the quirky shape, so I had to get a little creative. After all that, the handle was finally ready to go on. Fun fact, if you get another piece of wood that's wedge-shaped and hammer it in, it holds the handle on quite nicely. Then, cut off the excess wood from the top and sand that down. After that, I got started on shaping the handle. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I just started working down the corners. Then something clicked, and it started to feel like a symphony of sanding. At this point, the shape is looking quite nice, and there's just 2 more steps. First, sand everything down by hand to make sure there aren't any mistakes. I actually have no idea how this happened. It's like purple. Then, add some nice wood stain to really make this handle pop. Don't know why it was so loud though. That is nice. Ooh. And just like that, we have ourselves a beautiful handmade steel hammer. And it only took me about 8 hours. Not too bad. By the way, just washed my hands. Did not solve the purple issue. Pretend I'm you, and this is the subscribe button. Now let's start on the titanium hammer. For this one, I want to try out our shiny new toy, the CNC mill. This bad boy can turn any piece of metal into whatever you can design on a computer. So that's where I started. I'm bad at 3D modeling, so it took a little while. But after a minute, I had a design that I thought was great. I didn't want to just do the same hammer design for all these hammers, hence that funky little area down yonder. I think it looks cool, and when it comes to designing tools, looks are half the battle. But then it was time to actually start cutting on the CNC mill, which I definitely don't know how to do. Luckily, Alex knows pretty much everything and is really smart.
Do you like them chunky blocks?
Yeah, let's put that block in there.
Where do you find titanium blocks in Minecraft?
Y64.
What seed?
I'll put it on screen.
Do you like seeds?
No. Well, that's not going anywhere.
Ain't going nowhere.
So we mounted the titanium block in the CNC and got to work. First, this probe with a ruby on the tip maps out exactly where the block is. Then it does an epic automated tool swap to get to the bit it needs. It chooses this thicky boy, starts spraying a bunch of coolant before it's even close to the metal, and starts lowering down. Then it starts grinding the surface of the block to make sure it's completely fast. You might be thinking,
Wow, this is really slow.
yeah, it is. Luckily for you, we have the power of video editing. Thank you, Mr. Editor. Look how nice and smooth that is. It swaps over to the smaller bit and starts cutting out the shape of the actual hammer. Now we see a hammer beginning to emerge from what was a solid block of metal. Promising first half here. That is looking nice. How to stab yourself tutorial. Doug, are you yapping? But it's still a very basic shape, so we need to do some more cutting. And now it looks like something someone made in Minecraft. So it does another pass, and now it's looking smoother than a baby's bottom. It does another pass to get rid of those nasty sharp edges. And this side of the hammer is basically done. Now we have to flip it over and basically do the same thing on the other side. But you're probably thinking, how are we going to mount it if the bottom of the block is now a hammer shape? Well, allow me to introduce you to the soft jaws. You basically cut out the negative shape of the hammer into 2 pieces of aluminum, and those clamp onto the hammer shape perfectly. Then you do the same thing on the other side. Except this time you turn an inch of titanium into shavings for no reason. A smart person would have started with a smaller block of titanium, but I'm not a smart person. And just like that, it's still not done yet. We still need to do the top. So if you cut out 2 pieces like this on the Waterjet, they'll fit just right into the handle grooves. And you can slap that in the vise. Now you can just cut a V shape for pulling nails. And just like that, we have ourselves a lovely titanium hammer with some nice machining marks on it. The CNC mill is a wonderful creation. However, for the handle, we're gonna do things a little differently. First, we'll cut it out on the Waterjet again to save some time, but then we're gonna go cut a big notch in it and use a Japanese chisel to clean it up. But this time there was a big problem. Somebody broke in and did a really bad job. But luckily, I'm a pro and had it fixed in no time. And by no time, I mean about 45 minutes. After a quick hand sanding and some hole drilling, all that was left to do was apply a nice layer of clear coat to the handle and the table for good measure. But wait just a gosh darn minute. Titanium is one of the only metals that can completely change colors, and you think I'm just gonna leave it looking how it is? Think again. It's time to electro-anodize this bad boy. Basically, if you fill up a tub with salt water and put a very specific voltage through it, you can turn your titanium pretty much any color you want. At least that's how it's supposed to work. I got the test piece looking how I wanted, except there was some surface imperfections. Surely those are just because the test piece wasn't high quality, right? Just chuck the hammerhead in there, I'm sure it'll be fine. It was not fine. It did all the surface damage and none of the color changing. Exactly what I wanted. Get this out of here. Waste of my time. That was a waste of like 3 hours. But I have another plan. Heat works the same. You just swap out voltage for heat, kind of. It's just a little hard to be precise because you're doing it by hand. Now I just have to try to set it down without dropping it and setting something on fire. Then I just gave the bottom side the same treatment as the top side. Now it's time to do the bolts. You have to be careful with these because they heat up really quickly and that can ruin the color. But I think I did a fine job if I do say so myself. All that's left to do is screw these into the handle. I'm loving the contrast between the bluish purplish titanium and the white maple. And here she is. This thing looks groovy. The CNC mill works perfectly. The flame anodizing looks great, but I am a little butthurt that the electro anodizing ruined the surface and also didn't work. The titanium hammer took me about 35 hours to make, but that doesn't include Alex, who was running the CNC the whole time, and Everett, who was helping make the files for the CNC. So let's bump that number up to 50 hours just to be safe. The cool thing about a CNC is that to do this again, it wouldn't take that long, but the first time is quite time consuming, as you can see. Now it's time to start on the $10,000 hammer. But if you're watching a video about hammers, odds are you're probably a little overly enthusiastic about trains. To start off, I grabbed this regular boring old hammer we had sitting around the shop and started 3D scanning it. It took a second, but when it was done, I had a perfectly accurate 3D model of a hammer. I think that'll be quite useful in the future, but I digress. Then I 3D printed it and we had ourselves a perfectly good hammerhead, except I forgot to put the hole for the handle in it. So I fixed it. I also forgot to put a sprue on it, which is basically a funnel for when you pour the molten metal in, but that's nothing super glue can't solve. Now that our hammer shape is ready to go, we'll just put it in this fancy container. I'll explain why it looks like that later. First, I need to plug up all these holes, and even the entire bottom, with a bonus Doug cameo. I'll put the hammer mold in and realize I'm stupid and that I need to take the tape off the bottom. I'll add a very precise amount of water to this bucket, and then add some very special white powder to the water. This is called investment casting plaster. Then I'll mix that up real good and make sure there's no clumps. Pour that over the plaster, and I'll give it the old tappa to get rid of any bubbles. I was supposed to put this in a vacuum chamber to get rid of all the bubbles, but I didn't mix up enough plaster, so I spent my 5 minutes of vacuum chamber time making more plaster. With a third batch, we finally have it completely covered, and now we just need to leave it 24 hours to dry.
The next day.
Now we're ready to take the tape off and put this bad boy in the kiln, without the rubber cap of course. Now begins the very long and slow process of heating it up hot enough to melt the plastic out, but not too hot or too fast because that would cause an explosion.
All right, now it's gonna gradually go up to 700, stay there for 2 hours.
And then go up to 1,000 and stay there for 4 hours. It's currently 7 p.m. so I won't be here and we're gonna hope we don't burn the whole place down. So I left it overnight and this is what I came back to in the morning. Where there was PLA, there is now dust. So I took it out, shook it out, and put it back in. Now let's talk about gold for a second. To make this hammer, we figured we could buy about $10,000 worth of gold and use that in the hammerhead, and that would go pretty far, and we could just reuse it in another video. So I started doing some math and figured out that we would need $300,000 worth of gold to just make a hammerhead. And as much as I'd love to take out a mortgage for this video, I don't think that would be financially wise. So let's just make the hammerhead out of brass, and I'll use another tactic to make this hammer very expensive. So I need some brass and fast. While the mold was heating up again, I went and got some more brass. This is a fun piece of brass. Oh! Oh, I'm about to knock that steel over. Why is there so much shad right here? Sorry. I laid that on the Waterjet in a zesty way and started cutting. We have this brass left over from when a guy ordered brass knuckles from us and used a sheet that was twice as thick, planning to cut them in half. Needless to say, we haven't heard from him in a couple years. So I took it off the jet and cut it into more manageable pieces on the metal cutting bandsaw. Ouch. Right on my foot.
Luckily, these bad boys are steel toe.
A couple more cuts and they're ready to go in the crucible with those casings from earlier. So I'll put the crucible with the mold in and get it heated up to 700 degrees. Now this is where things start to get intense. Okay, so the mold needs to only be 700 degrees, but the brass needs to be 1800. But I only have one kiln, if you haven't noticed, and it can only be one temperature at a time. So I take the mold and put it in ceramic insulation to keep it warm, and then I turn the kiln on and the brass melts while hopefully the mold stays hot enough. It needs to be at least 500 degrees to not explode, give or take. So we'll see what happens. I got the mold ready to pour and pulled the red hot crucible out of the kiln, but it wasn't hot enough, so back in it goes. At this point, the mold is starting to cool down, so I covered it again and got slightly more stressed. Attempt number 2. The brass was hotter, but still not hot enough. I'm really starting to run out of time here. I checked the brass again and it still wasn't hot enough. Finally, the brass was hot enough to pour. but I'm just gonna let you watch this disaster and see what happened for yourself. Oh, that does not look very liquidy. Oh no. Oh no. Where's the fire extinguisher? Holy crap. Okay, well. Oh man. Oh no. Don't do that at home, kids. That's why you're supposed to use proper tongs. I'm actually so lucky that didn't hit my exposed legs or anything. Holy crap. The worst thing that happened was I got a little on my shoe. Ooh, that's kind of in there deep, huh? This should be a lesson to y'all to not do things when you're rushed. That's when accidents always happen. I surveyed the damage and luckily it didn't seem too bad. The brass came off the nice new epoxy floor pretty easily. So then I went home and cried. The next day, there was nothing else to do but try again and chase the squirrel that had moved in overnight. Oh, he came out.
Hey, buddy. I think these things can kind of get a little vicious, can't they?
I think so.
He's just staring at me.
You can tell that the metal incident really scared me because I spent $250 buying a new metal furnace so there wouldn't be a problem of only having one kiln. This bad boy will prevent us from spilling molten brass all over the floor. I got that all set up and put the pieces of splashed brass in it. Finally, everything was ready to go. So I pulled the crucible out of the furnace and started pouring the metal into the mold. But this hammer wasn't ready to give up so easily. It turns out the metal wasn't hot enough, so it just hardened in the pour spout. Luckily, I was able to pull the brass out that had hardened, so I had another chance without having to remake the entire mold. I got ready to try again, but the brass got too hot because I didn't think that small kiln was capable of getting it that hot. This is a problem because it makes poisonous zinc oxide and makes that nasty layer on the top, and we don't want that being in our final product. So I poured the molten metal out so it wouldn't take forever to heat up tomorrow. Watch how the pot expands immediately when I pour it in. Oh boy, that's a high quality pan. So that's another day down the drain. Third time's the charm. We've gotten the mold a little bit hotter and the metal is also hotter, even though the temperature, it wasn't set as high. It was just able to marinate and actually get the heat in there better. Okay, now we're also going to use this vacuum. That should help the metal pour into all the tiny cracks and crevices of this mold. That's what those holes in the sides are for. All right, here we go. Now our metal, gotta poke it. Oh, that's looking good. Oh, I don't have a good grip. I gotta rotate it. Now it's better for pouring. Here we go. Please work. Oh, it's working. It looks like it's actually going well. Did that fill early? Am I crazy? Is it just smaller than I thought? Maybe it is. I think that went well. We might look inside and see something atrocious tomorrow, but it looks good right now. Doug has something to say about that, doesn't he? No. The next day, I drilled some holes in the top and in the sides, and I was finally able to pull it out. That looks great, except for this right here. It was so close to being perfect, but we can fix it. I cleaned off the plaster with a wire brush, sculpted a new claw with some 5-minute epoxy, then cut off the sprue. Now let's start on the handle. I grabbed the purple heart that I got from the fancy wood store, and you guessed it, mounted it to the Waterjet. Then sanded it down on the belt sander, then by hand, just like the last two. I made some adjustments so it would fit in the hammerhead, but before I put the handle on permanently, I sanded down all the surfaces of the hammerhead to make sure the brass was nice and smooth. Then I hammered the handle on and sanded down the handle so it would be flush with the hammerhead. I took a Dremel to all those hard to reach places that I couldn't get with the belt sander. Now it's time to put the claw in claw hammer. I got a very small bit for the Dremel and carefully carved out the nail slot. Then I got an even smaller bit and did the same thing. Then I got an even smaller bit and did the really small part. A few seconds of using the belt sander the wrong way will make this thing nice and smooth. Off camera, I added a little piece of wood to close the gap, so I'll sand that down. Now it's ready to be permanently mounted, so I'll hammer in a small wedge of wood. And I know you've all been waiting for this part. Diamond encrusting time. I'll start by drawing lines at very specific intervals so I know where to drill. I'll lubricate the drill bit with the oil that leaked out of the Waterjet pump, then start drilling holes in the hammerhead. Okay, that looks good. I just have to do that 100 more times. I did the first row and it looked pretty good, but I realized the drill bit wasn't staying centered because of the slanted angle of the hammerhead. So I grabbed a screw and started hammering to make starter holes for the drill bit. That alone took me about 30 minutes, but it made it so the drilling went a lot faster and the holes were more evenly spaced. I took a really quick break to go to Los Angeles and stand in front of the Fast and Furious house. Then it was back to hammering a screw into the hammer. I decided to use a hand drill for these tougher to reach holes and ended up just doing the rest of them like that. You're probably thinking, this hammer looks super lame and it doesn't look gold at all. Well, hold on to your horses for just 1 minute because I'm about to change all of that with some genuine 24 karat gold leaf. First, I have to apply this special gold leaf glue that's definitely not just overpriced Elmer's glue. And once that's dried a little bit, I can start placing the gold leaf on it. I'll use a special little gold leafing brush to even it all out. I just kind of put the gold leaf wherever it was needed in no particular order, just to bother a lot of you in the comments. Then I discovered you can just kind of place the gold leaf on the hammer and that would save you a whole lot of headache and time. This was a very mesmerizing process because I was able to watch this ordinary hammer transform into a special golden one. And I made extra sure to cover up the epoxy part so no one would know that there isn't real metal under there. That'll be our little secret. When I was done, this thing was looking like $1 million. Now it's time to start placing the diamonds. I bought this special wax pencil that can pick up the diamonds and place them into the holes.
One down, like 200 to go.
So I sat there like a good little jeweler placing diamonds for 4 hours straight. Whew, what a wild ride that was, but we finally made it. And with a final product that I'm quite proud of. The total time it took me to make this hammer was about 100 hours, and that's not including my trip to go see Dominic Toretto and his family. So can we finally start testing these things? I've been waiting this whole video. We're going to test each of these hammers on how well they can hammer and pull a nail. Basic hammer stuff. Let's start with the stone hammer. I'm just now realizing the nails are taller than the 2x4. So maybe this isn't the best test. Not the best hammering shape here, but the whole point was to not spend a lot of time. All right, look at that. That is working like a charm, and I don't care what anybody else says. You know, for $1, literal sticks and stones, that wasn't half bad. I'll give the stone hammer a 4 out of 10. But if you factor in the cost, 9 out of 10. Let's move on to the steel hammer. Oof, that felt good. It's got a nice wide face here. Yeah. That's a good hammer right there. I give the steel hammer a 9 out of 10. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Let's see what the titanium beauty's got. Solid. Whew. Uh-oh. Yeah, that was nice. I'll give that a 10 out of 10.
Nice.
All right, the golden diamond encrusted hammer. Something tells me this is really gonna damage the face. Good first hit. All right. All right, very nice. But the face is looking a little beat up. That was to be expected. I may have hit these in a little too hard, and now there's no way to get them out, except for this one. Let's move on to the steel hammer. Well, a hammer's only as good as you can dig nails out of wood with it, or as the old saying goes, this is not the tool for the job. Luckily, it is pretty dang sharp, so it's chewing through this wood. Learned this trick back in That hurts my ears. The geometry of my forks, whatever they're called, is not very good. That's what happens when you try blacksmithing for the first time. Oh, it's coming. Yeah, baby. Oh, it pulled that, no problem. The problem was getting down deep enough into the wood so that the hammer could actually get around it. Here's what I mean. The Stanley hammer is tapered like this, so the nail will get stuck like that. So even though it's not up on top, it's still able to pull it out. Ugh. And it's kind of perfectly shaped to pull out a nail, whether it's right here or all the way in, whereas mine doesn't have that taper, can only do it when it's on the top. So it has to get much deeper into the wood, as you can see. I'd give this a 7 out of 10 for pulling nails. Did a great job doing it, just a little too thick to really get under there if it's all the way in the wood. I'm afraid the titanium one will have the same problem because it doesn't have the taper like the store-bought hammer. That would have required an entire different step and orientation and clamping position for the CNC. It might not have even been possible to get the CNC to do this when this was all in the way. The rest of the machine could run into this part. We might be doing some digging again. I think that just kind of happened as I was getting the finish right on the belt sander. Ugh, come on, user error. Oh man, dang. This is chewing up the wood. Oh, nice. That was great. Once again, the main problem was actually getting to underneath the nail. To rate the nail pulling, the tips do a great job of getting it up just enough to get the rest under it, and then you can slowly inch it up, and once you get it into the hole there, it's game over. That nail is coming up whether it likes it or not. And we're obviously not gonna try with the golden hammer because it's resin and it would break.
The lion does not concern himself with the little bit of molten brass on the floor.
Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. It's available now for free on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and even mobile. New players and returning players that haven't played in 6 months can receive a massive bonus bundle on PC and console. Just make sure to sign up using our links in the description or the pinned comment.